Plus One Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we talk about tabletop role-playing games using or inspired by the Apocalypse engine. I'm your MC, Rich, and today we have Alexi Sargent of Cloven Pine Games. How are you doing, Alexi?
I'm doing well. So wonderful to be here.
Excited to have you on. Let's kick it off. How long have you been playing PBTA games? What was your gateway?
I got started playing PBTA games at the beginning of 2018, and my gateway game was Masks: A New Generation, created by Brendan Conway and published by Magpie Games. It's still a favorite game of mine, as it perfectly captures the superpowered action and emotional stakes of stories about teenaged superheroes. I ran a campaign of Masks that lasted for more than a year and featured every player in the campaign changing playbooks over the course of that year. Yeah.
Wow. That is pretty awesome. So you ran it, and you went from no PBTA to running a yearish long campaign of it. That has got to be crazy. Learning on the fly. Nice.
Well, I listened to some podcasts beforehand.
Oh, good call. All right, well, let's jump on over here and read a sitch.
Sounds great.
Read a sitch. So in Read a Sitch, the goal is for our guest to talk about a specific issue of play, a journal of play, observe things happening in an ongoing PBTA game. It's wide open, and you've got a really cool topic for us to talk about today, Alexi. Why don't you lead us off?
Absolutely. So many PBTA games instruct the GM to, quote, ask questions and build on the answers, unquote. And Masks phrases this as ask provocative questions and build on the answers. Mm-hmm. I know other games specify that your questions should be interesting questions. But there's the rub. What makes a GM question an interesting question or a provocative question as opposed to something merely trivial?
Yes. Ask interesting questions sounds great, but what makes a question interesting, Alexi? You got some thoughts?
Yeah. There's no way to guarantee this, but I have found a couple helpful approaches to amp up the interestingness of questions. Mm-hmm. So first off, there are some questions that arise very naturally from the character playbooks. Right now, I'm running Tales from the Low Cantrefs, a Hearth fantasy PBTA game by Luke Jordan of Games from the Wild Wood. And one of the playbooks has this ability. You instantly feel if anyone near you dies. Naturally, I want to know, what does that feel like? So you ask a question like that, and you'll usually get something cool from the player. Perhaps, as in my game, they'll say, it's like an unnatural chill wind that only I can perceive. And then you can build on that answer. You just need to be ready to bring that back, possibly twisted or amplified when the time comes. So say, oh, you rolled a miss while you're talking to your dad. Yeah, you're doing your best not to give too much away when there's the sudden blast of cold air. He clearly can't feel it, but it almost bowls you over. Something terrible has happened. The winds of death are blowing all around you. What do you do?
Oh, that's nice. That really builds on it. That's great. Anything else?
Well, there's another approach that I like to use. It draws inspiration from outside of the PBTA world, actually. Epadiah Ravachol has this Jenga-based horror game called Dread. That's a real classic of indie gaming. And one standout feature of Dread is the loaded questions used in character creation. How might your life be different if you hadn't driven off in a rage that night? Even though your broken leg healed, what activity haven't you taken up again? And these questions all have some built-in assumptions. They're loaded questions, but they still leave a lot open to the player. And as befits a game about horror, they give the GM hooks to get at the character's deepest fears and regrets or insecurities.
That is wicked. I'm going to have to use that one. I like it.
Yeah, so I like loading a question a little bit, and that's a way to make it interesting. Another example from Tales from the Low Cantrefs. I used this to drill down on a general idea put forward by a player, that her character had a domineering mother, someone considered very formidable by the whole village. So when the mother first appeared in play, and the character rolled a miss talking to her, I ask, there's got to be some extremely potent expression of your mother's that always stops you in your tracks. What does that look like? And we get to hear about the mother's extremely eloquent single raised eyebrow. And that's great, because it's also something that I can build on later. When the character had a conflict with her younger sister, I described the sister trying to replicate the mother's dangerous eyebrow raise, and it's clear she's been practicing it.
That is delightful.
So I guess, in summary, a couple keys for interesting questions are to follow curiosities raised by the playbooks, and to ask loaded questions that give you juicy moves to make against the player characters when the time is right.
Yeah, and I especially like the ones where the players give you the opportunity to do a little bit of physical acting like that eyebrow raise. That's nice. Asking interesting questions can be a daunting task, but it's really worth the effort. One of the things that I use from asking those questions and building on the answers is to build up NPCs from scratch. People go to a place I didn't expect. I grab a name from the names list. Thank goodness those things exist. And then sometimes I'll just throw out the name, a very brief description, like 2 to 3 things, maybe a color, maybe a piece of clothing, an age, something along those lines. Then I ask the player something like, what was the last thing that you argued about with this person? Or what about them makes you jealous? Which gets to that insecurity thing you were talking about from Dread.
Exactly.
I love it because it immediately sets off some kind of relationship with those characters. It gives me a palette from which to portray that NPC, and they already have some buy-in for it. So then I lean hard into whatever they're jealous of, or whatever it was that they argued about. The NPC probably going to bring it up like right away. Hey, boy, it's been a while since so-and-so. So I found that really launches things forward when they just went someplace I didn't expect. So yeah, asking good questions, having those loaded questions, really, really valuable.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, using them to build up those emotions about NPCs is a great use of interesting questions. And the more concrete details, like that raised eyebrow, that you can elicit from the players with these questions, the more material you have for your reactions.
So what do you do when you ask a question, asking for those details, and you get a player who kind of clams up a little bit? Like, they don't give you much. They're like, I don't know. And they just throw out some pat answer, something that's really difficult for you to dig into. How do you respond to that, Alexi?
Oh, that's a good question. I think usually people do have something if you just give them a little more impetus, right? So if I get an answer that's not something I can work with, right, that's not something that like actually gives me a picture in my head, I'll just ask a follow-up question, sometimes, a multiple choice follow-up question to get a little more. They say something like, oh, she's so bossy. And I'm like, just to help me picture that, does that mean she's loud and in your face, or she's quiet and just clearly in control?
Nice.
And then maybe they'll say, oh, it's the first. Maybe they'll say it's the second. Maybe they'll say, no, it's different. It's this other thing. And then that gives me something.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a great idea to give those multiple choicey type things. Even if they hate all your options, it forces them to make some kind of choice, even if it's flying in your face. I never hold on to those options I've offered as the most cool thing. It's just the first thing I could think of, or a couple of diametrically opposed ideas, just like what you gave as an example. That's really good, Alexi. I bet that works a lot. So you came on here to talk about a particular game. I think we should jump over here and open our brain to Back Again from the Broken Land. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Open your brain. All right, we are here to open our brain to Back Again from the Broken Land, which, as this episode comes out, is out on Kickstarter as part of the Zine Quest 3. Isn't that right, Alexi?
That's correct. We're kickstarting it for the first 2 weeks of February as part of Zine Quest.
Oh man, better get in on it quick. Got a fortnight. Okay, good to know. So Back Again from the Broken Land, and you and I talked about this before we started, is land, singular. Back Again from the Broken Land. What's the setting? What's it about?
Absolutely. Back Again from the Broken Land is a game of small adventurers sharing stories on the long walk home from an epic war. It takes place in a world of high fantasy, where the evil Doomslord has just fallen in a calamitous battle in the Broken Land. You and your companions have played a part in that conflict, and will find out about what happened and what burdens it has left you carrying as you make the journey home, evading the Doomslord's terrifying hunters along the way.
Interesting. Okay. What's the inspiration for this? It sounds familiar to me.
So this is very much inspired by the Lord of the Rings, and particularly the passages of Tolkien's work where you have the hobbits traveling and talking, sharing stories, discussing their hopes and fears. We were trying to get into some of those more contemplative stretches of the Lord of the Rings, because of course, obviously, Tolkien's a big influence on the entire gaming hobby, but there's a very different feel to the stories you can tell in, say, Dungeons & Dragons than the stories that are actually told in The Lord of the Rings, and we wanted to tap into some of that less covered emotional space.
That's really awesome. I love this, and the pitch for it is right up there. I remember as a little kid just diving into the entire Lord of the Rings series and the part of returning home, and what Frodo found was really, really rough. But the travel, the passages, those conversations is not always something you saw in the movies, but it was really a bigger part of the books. And I think it's going to be awesome to explore that.
If you're someone who watched The Return of the King and wanted more epilogue, this is the game for you.
Yeah, there we go. More epilogue. What mechanics are different in Back Again from the Broken Land versus, say, Apocalypse World?
So the game is built for one-shot play, so it's fairly stripped down compared to a full Apocalypse World game. There's no harm track or wound mechanic. You have burdens, which represent the physical and emotional weight that you're carrying, but if you get into a fight with something truly threatening, like one of the Doomslord's hunters, you're basically going to retire your character right there. You are little people, and the world is very big, so combat is de-emphasized compared to Apocalypse World.
Okay.
Another key mechanic here is telling stories. This is inspired in large part by the excellent Escape from Dino Island by Sam Roberts and Sam Tung. There, your characters tell stories to fill in their backstories in the style of Jurassic Park or Lost. Here, the characters tell stories of home and stories of the journey to give us a glimpse of the place they left behind and the epic adventure they were part of before this homeward trek. I can tell you some of the story prompts we have. Tell us the story of how your weapon was shattered. Tell us the story of the service you paid for with a song from home and the verse you omitted. Or tell us the story of how you made contact with the Doomslord in a place that should have been protected, which is a story prompt from the Turncoat playbook if you want to be an extremely dramatic character, like a Gollum, right? Someone who was used by the Doomslord and came back at the 11th hour.
Ooh, nice. What are some of the other playbooks that you have? You talk about this Turncoat. What are some other ones that really excite you?
I love the Shepherd. The Shepherd playbook says, when things are darkest, your companions look to you. How will you hold your flock together? So it's very much about this burden of leadership. The shepherd's move can lift other people's burdens, but it might cause you to take on more burdens yourself as you're keeping everything inside and not sharing what's weighing you down until perhaps you collapse under the weight.
Right. And when you say burden, you're talking like capital B burden. That's a mechanic thing in the game, right?
Capital B burden. It's a mechanic in the game, though it should also be a big tool for storytelling, we hope.
Right. Cool. Okay, well, since I hit some mechanics, let's find out. What is your favorite move and why?
Oh, there's so many exciting moves to choose from. Share a meal is very important for the feel of this game. If you roll it well enough, you get what one playtester described as the most emotionally cathartic breakfast in history. We actually had to nerf the move slightly. It was too cathartic. But yes, there will definitely be sharing a meal in the game. It wouldn't be a game about small adventurers returning from a great war without that, I think. But I think the move I need to go with here is the move that makes the biggest statement about the world of the game, and that is make a desperate stand. I can read the text here. When you make a desperate stand against the hunters or another terrible threat, tell us how you are overmatched and overawed. Then, tell an unlocked story of doom, or else tell us how you fall prey to the hunters. So there's no die roll. If you make a desperate stand, you're not leaving things up to chance. Mostly you're deciding that your story is probably coming to an end with a story of doom. And I think what this move does is just by existing, it clarifies the limits of your characters and how terrifying the hunters are. And it gives permission to focus on running and hiding since fighting is not on the table. And then the stories of doom that you're picking from create tantalizing possibilities for the final moments for your character. There's one get out of jail free option, a story of doom, how you narrowly escape thanks to a gift you received along the way. But once one character has used that, it's gone. So once that's been used up, suddenly you're looking at stories of doom that indeed are the end of the line for your character. You need to unlock other stories to find non-horrible endings, like how you seemingly fall, but rumors of someone like you persist in local tales, or how you take a single hunter down with you in a nigh miraculous last stand.
Nice. This is very Boromir-like. I like that. That's good.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, you got me pretty excited about this, Alexi. What do you think about us possibly acting under fire and telling a story about somebody coming back from a broken land?
I think we should do that.
It is time to act under fire.
In Act Under Fire, I get to be the most selfish podcast host ever and play a game, and you get to listen to it. So hopefully I'll throw in some mechanics so you can learn a bit about it. I am going to be playing the signature character for our podcast, Plussy. And as we looked at the character keeper that you've created, really nice.
Thank you.
The playbook, The Wayfinder, already has once and everything. So that's got to be the one I pick, right?
Yeah, the Wayfinder's kind of a jack of all trades, and it represents a character who has wandered even before this big adventure, but something still is pulling them home. So, Plussy the Wayfinder, tell us just a little about Plussy, especially if you can tell us the gear, the gaze, and the gift that you have chosen.
Oh my goodness, so much alliteration going on. All right, Plussy wears mud-caked, hobnailed boots. His gaze is childlike but confident. And his gift that he carries is a drink from a distant river.
Ooh, so that gift is something you've received along the way, and possibly were we playing a full game, we'd eventually hear the story of how you received that gift and learn a little more about what it means to you. So because you can't be a little person traveling all by yourself back from the broken land, we're going to say Plussy has a traveling companion, maybe Pommon the Volunteer, with bright and believing eyes. The Volunteer is in some ways the most pure and innocent of all the playbooks, so I'm going to give you a little friend who will probably not get into any danger or problems along the way.
All right. So poor little Pommon. Is the Volunteer similar to like a Samwise, would you say, or not at all?
In some ways, there's multiple playbooks that recall Samwise.
Nice.
Because there's also the bodyguard who is very focused on protecting the Fellowship, and I feel like that has some Sam energy too. But certainly you could play a Volunteer who's very much like initial Gardener Sam, a little in over his head, and we love him for it.
Rock.
So when we pick up with Plussy and Pommon making their way back from the great battle against the Doomslord, we find them walking through the steel-sown field. So this is a great battlefield, and I have to ask you to help me paint the scene here. Plussy, what do you see that has sprung up amidst the detritus of the battle?
So the two ideas I have, let me throw them by you, Alexi. The first one is that during the battle, the nearby river, part of it was somehow rerouted to wash away some of the soldiers, and that's a thing that's sprung up as this heretofore unmapped and unknown creek.
Oh, that's cool.
Do you like that one? The other one was much simpler. It was just that the battle had disturbed a hedgehog lair, and there was a small family of hedgehogs that had kind of climbed out of their burrow to move things out of the way. I think I like the river, though.
I mean, there's nothing that says we can't have both, right?
Why not both? Okay, both of those things I have seen, and they are unexpected. I've been through here before. Yeah,
so we have this stream that has turned the battlefield into a muddy quagmire, right? You know, there's rivulets of water, and everywhere is damp. You watch your feet to avoid sinking deep into the mire. And then also there are these little hedgehogs scurrying over the mud, searching for a new home in the aftermath of the great battle that tore up the place where they lived. So Pommon leans down and picks up a little hedgehog and says, "Oh, Plussy, look, it's lost."
Well, hold on, and Plussy will go look for a shield. Surely there was a shield dropped around here that we can pick up and maybe carry this one and the others to some drier place, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. So there are arms and armaments lying all around the field. It sounds like maybe you're trying to chart a course to find a way forward for yourself and your companions.
Okay, let's do that. So when you chart a course for your traveling band, tell a story of the journey and roll plus keen. Let's go ahead and roll that keen. I got a +1, of course. Oh my, this does not look good. An ignominious beginning as I have rolled a 4 plus 1 makes it a 5.
Okay. So we'll see that in a moment. Let me hear a story of the journey, Plessy. You'll find a list of stories in the Character Keeper. Plus, you can also look down at the bottom of your playbook for a couple playbook-specific stories, if those are ones you're excited by.
As Pommon and I move through the battlefield, and I pick up a shield that could work, but then I see that there's a spear that's been run through it and a giant hole. I realize that's not going to work, so I keep working, and Pommon holding the hedgehog is near enough for me to tell him about the person that I hope to be reunited with back home. I ask Pommon if he remembers Eowyn. Eowyn is a young girl, probably not so young, but hopefully she's still where we were back home the last time I was there. I promised to write her, but never did.
And Pommon is, nodding sympathetically. He's like, well, how would you even have sent a letter back? It's not like there are great birds we could have handed it to or something.
You're right. Remind me, Pommon, when we get through this area, I'm going to write a few different letters, and you tell Eowyn that I wrote them and meant to send them back, right?
As Pommon kind of furrows his brow, trying to take this in, and as he does so, he kind of steps wrong, right? And lets out a cry as he's clearly sunk into some of this treacherous ground. And you turn to see what's going on, and you see ice starting to spread over the surface of the water on this battlefield. Remind me, the hunters that ride out to do the will of the Doomslord, the hunters that are still out there seeking vengeance for the fall of the Doomslord. What is it that makes them too terrifying to face? I'll give you a couple options here. Is it that they wear the faces of your fallen friends? Is it that they linger in your head if you look them in the eye?
The hunters are known as the Unfallen because the Doomslord picks up the bodies of those who face them and fall in battle, and I don't think that they bring their souls back. I think that there's some other worldly monster forced to exist in the bodies of our friends. Surely it's not a tortured soul of my friends. It's just a shell. That's all that's left.
You have to hope so. You know that cold spreading everywhere, that ice creeping over the surface of the water, means that the hunters are approaching. And as you turn to try to see what has happened to Pommon, you see looming behind him an armored form, a warrior that fell valiantly fighting against the Doomslord, but now his eyes are only icy blue, and he reaches out a hand towards Pommon. What do you do, Plessy?
I lock up for a moment at the face of Korig, but I can't let Pommon fall too, so I'm going to try to run forward and grab Pommon and lift him up, and I don't know if the hedgehog's going to make it, but he'll be fine. I got to get Pommon and try to grab Pommon and run.
Perfect. That sounds like a peril move. We're turning away from our homeward bound moves and turning instead to our peril moves. So when you run, name who you most want to keep safe and roll plus Swift.
I think right now I most want to keep Pommon safe.
Let's go ahead and roll with Swift here, as it sounds like you're just grabbing Pommon and just booking it out of there, not staying to look to see if there's anything left of your old friend inside this hunter, just trying to escape, it sounds like.
Yeah. 5 plus 1 is 6.
Oh, Plessy. On a miss, you stumble or slip, and the person you chose is left in the most vulnerable spot. So, as you're rushing forward to grab Pommon, the hedgehog falls, and the hunter stoops and picks up the hedgehog. Pommon yells, shakes you off, and runs back towards the hunter.
Oh. I scream out, "No, Pommon, please don't! We have to run! That's Korig!"
It's possible that you've just named a burden, Plessy.
It is possible. I think it's likely. Let's go for it. I've got a burden, so what do we do?
Yeah, so everyone starts out with a number of burdens in this game. They are unnamed at the start, but as you learn more about your character and what they've been through, you can give names to your burdens. So is it possible you have a burden like fallen friend or memory of Korrig or something like that we've just named?
Yeah, I think the memory of Korrig, my fallen friend, is definitely a burden I have.
Absolutely. And if we were playing the full game and Plessy managed to make it home at the end, the number of burdens you have and which of them are named or unnamed will determine your epilogue. The tone of your epilogue will be based a little bit on how many burdens you've cleared, how many burdens you've named. We'll find out whether you're telling a story of growth or telling a story of isolation or perhaps a story of amends somewhere in the middle. So it sounds like Plessy might be on the verge of making a desperate stand. Is that going to happen now, or are we going to leave that as our cliffhanger?
Oh, man, I think it's the cliffhanger, right? The cliffhanger is that Paimon hurt his leg. He's gone back for the hedgehog. He's about to be within reach of Korrig, and we see that terrified look on Plessy's face as he turns from running and starts back, calling out for his friend.
Fantastic.
Well, that was gripping in a very short period of time. Good work. I can see why this is a one-shot. I don't know if I could handle multiple shots with such stress, Alexi.
Thanks for playing, Rich.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about this Kickstarter. So it's Zine Quest, which this is the third year of it. Zine Quest for PBTA has been pretty bananas good. Apocalypse World Burned Over came out as a result of the first one. That's a really cool hack that Meg and Vincent did of Apocalypse World. So really a big fan of Zine Quest. I've backed a number of them. But here, talk to me specifically about Back Again from the Broken Land and the Kickstarter. If people log onto that page, what are they going to see and what are you excited about?
Yeah, I'm really excited. Back Again from the Broken Land is a project we love on Kickstarter, so you should be able to see it near the top if you go searching for Zine Quest or search for Back Again from the Broken Land on Kickstarter. We are really excited to get this game out there. This game was originally published in Codex Magazine, and we are revising and expanding that version to be a full zine for Zine Quest. You can back us to get the PDF, or back for a little more, you get a physical copy of the game. With a little extra, you get a Zine Quest exclusive cover. My wife, Leah, is a co-designer of Back Again from the Broken Land. We're excited to be working together on this Kickstarter, and we've got some cool stretch goal authors lined up. I'll say you've mentioned one of them already in this podcast.
Oh my, now I'm thinking back. Who have I talked about? That's pretty cool. And then the physical products. So about how many pages is this? I know the Zine Quest is always like the form factor and all that. There's like some ideas around what a zine's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, so this will be a zine, a 40-page saddle-stitched booklet. So nice and compact, but there's going to be plenty of material in there, including a lot of additional GM support to help you tell these stories of small adventurers making their way back.
Yeah, that rocks. 40 pages for a one-shot PBTA game sounds just the right size to me. That is really cool.
We've been really happy to playtest this and get wonderful testimonials from folks. I think one of my favorite was someone saying, "This is a storytelling game that feels like a bittersweet montage at the end of a giant fantasy movie. The burden of hope, the clarity of sacrifice, the soul-healing power of a lovingly made breakfast."
That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, if we played a little longer, maybe Plessy would have gotten to share a meal and clear that burden that he took on.
Well, maybe if I didn't roll like crap, we would have. But I think that the dice wanted to tell a different story than that, Alexi. So, Lexi, for folks who are interested in this or want to follow you and other projects that you and your wife work on, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can follow all my gaming endeavors online at Cloven Pine Games. So definitely check out Cloven Pine Games on Twitter and on itch.io, where I've got a number of games available for free. And there'll be links at both those places pointing you to the Back Again from the Broken Land Kickstarter.
All right. Well, Alexi, thanks so much for making some time to come on here and talk about Back Again from the Broken Land.
My pleasure. Wonderful to be here with you.
Plus One Forward is a production of the Gauntlet community, Richard Rogers and Rach Shelkey. You can find us at gauntlet-rpg.com or follow us on Twitter at +1FWD. If you would like to support our show, visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/gauntlet. The games mentioned on this show use the Apocalypse engine, which is a creation of Vincent and Magay Baker. The music for Plus One Forward is from the Savage Aural Hotbed CD Gomi Daiko. The songs used are Gomi Daiko, Metal Version, and Drowning Attitude. You can find more amazing tunes by Savage Aural Hotbed on their website, www.savageauralhotbed.com.
Hi, this is Lowell, manager for the Gauntlet Gaming Community. I want to tell you that we have a Gauntlet Community Open Gaming event coming up the weekend of February 25th through the 28th. This is a free online RPG mini-con aimed at getting new players acclimated to online play, showing off awesome story, OSR, and indie games, and also introducing folks to how we run games on the Gauntlet. Signups will open February 1st at noon Eastern. Even if an event's filled, we have wait lists, and signing up for those is a good way to show game facilitators what RPGs are in demand. You can find all the details and links at gauntlet-rpg.com/gauntlet-community-open-gaming. There you'll find a link to the online registration calendar. Most sessions run 3 to 4 hours, and we have scheduled breaks between blocks. We're still adding events as of this recording. All sessions follow our Gauntlet Code of Conduct, which includes the mandatory presentation and use of safety tools by game facilitators. We hope you'll check out this community-created event. It's free, and anyone can play. You don't have to be a Patreon supporter or community member. Thanks so much.